We all hear of a lot of young 20 something startup founders in the news these days. These founders have reached here because they're standing on the shoulders of giants. And today I have the privilege of talking to the OG, the original giant of the Indian internet startup ecosystem. You may have guessed it right. I'm talking to Sanjeev Bikhchandani, founder Infoedge, which minted several unicorns like Naukri.com, Policy Bazaar, and Zomato. Listen on to this masterclass on building and scaling up a startup. The first thing I want to ask you, since you do look at so many pitch decks every day and you have invested in as many companies as you have, you are the godfather of investing in the sense of startups. What do you look for in making an investment decision? What are the six things, if I had to ask you, the top things that you look for in making an investment decision?
First of all, thank you for inviting me, Vani. This is a pleasure. See, when we first began to invest, we went in completely untutored, uneducated. We've been investing for the last 14 years, but until about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we didn't ever hire anybody in our team who had prior investing experience. So we have learned on the job. So a little bit of common sense, a little bit of luck, and we got into it, right? In hindsight, a lot of what I'm telling you is hindsight. When we were actually doing it first, we didn't really fully understand it. The first thing we look for is some evidence of natural traction, what I call natural traction. Now, what is natural traction? It means that the site or the app is getting traffic and usage without spending much money on advertising, which means that they've built some sort of magnet that इनको audience आ रहा है, customers आ रहे हैं, और कुछ engagement है, कुछ sale है, कुछ है, and they're bootstrapping and they don't spend much on advertising because they can't afford it, but it's still happening. Now, that is clear evidence of what? That is clear evidence of they've got something there, which is some sort of magnet, which is perhaps solving an unsolved problem, which is why people are coming, which is, अगर इसमें investment गई, तो it can scale up on the basis of this evidence कि कुछ हो रहा है वहाँ पे, right? Customer आ रहे हैं, right? Now, when you peel away this reasons for natural traction, you discover many things. कि it's hitting a hot button, it's solving an unsolved problem, it is some unmet need, some gap in the market, right? Something is there which is causing this natural traction. So when I met Deepinder Goyal for the first time in 2010, that founder of Zomato, that time Zomato was called Food eBay. And he was 28 years old. He was, 5 years out of IIT. He'd worked in Bain Consulting. And, he was running this site Food eBay, which I really liked. And what I liked about it was there were several restaurant listing sites, but Food eBay was the only one with all the menu cards. And I used to really find it useful that you could go to the restaurant page, figure out what dish, what price, compare it to this one, these dishes, this price, whatever, and then decide where to go.
And
then decide where to go, or even dial up and order delivery or takeaway. Right? The other restaurants had photographs, they had reviews, but they did not have this data. So I reached out to him and I said to him, we met for the first time. It was a pure cold call. I didn't know him earlier. I just sent him a cold email. And I said to him that, listen, where did you get the idea from to put on the menu cards? I find it quite useful. And he said, look, I was working in Bain Consulting. Now, Bain Consulting, there were maybe 50, 55 people working there in Gurgaon, mostly young, mostly male, mostly single, several living away from their hometowns, which basically means they would not get food from home.
Right.
Now, office hours were long because consulting, right? You invariably ate 2 meals in the office, lunch and dinner. There was a cafeteria in the office that would not serve food, but you could bring your own food in.
But these are young lads.
Okay, and to make life easy for the people in the company, the admin staff had collected, I think, their delivery menu cards. Delivery menu cards of maybe 80 restaurants that would deliver to their location and put them in a file folder in the cafeteria. He said you could not take the file folder to your desk because it's a shared resource. So you had to come there, wait, stand in line. He says 1 o'clock, 1 baje, line lag jati thi. And you wait 15 minutes to get access to the file folder, then you have 30 seconds to look at it, then you call up the restaurant and you place the order, then you come back after 1 hour when the food is delivered. So he says, huge pain. So he says, one Saturday I came in and I scanned all these menu cards and put them up on my personal page on the office intranet. Right? And within 2 days, the IT infra guy came to me and said, hey, how is it that 95% of internal traffic is going to your page? He says, that's when the penny dropped. And I figured, this is not just my problem, it's everybody's problem. And he went out on weekends with his boss's permission, went out on weekends and did a personal project. And he gathered menu cards from 800 restaurants in Delhi NCR. When he had that, he put it up on a site and he called it Foodie Bay. And that's when, a few months later, I called him. So he had got that customer insight that this is an unsolved problem. This is an unsatisfied need. That aggregation of menu cards has got value. So keep on aggregating menu cards and restaurant data and put it up and traffic will come. So based on that customer insight about that unsatisfied need, unsolved problem, he was able to execute a very simple idea very well, which in hindsight, people say, hey, how obvious. But that's the thing about many great ideas. In hindsight, others say, hey, that is so obvious. But it wasn't so obvious. If it was obvious, he would not have been the first guy to do it. So when we meet a company which is demonstrating this kind of, one of the most important questions we ask is, ye idea kahan se aaya? How did you get this idea?
Right.
And it gives us a lot of confidence if that idea has come from a customer insight of this nature, as opposed to, hey, it's working in America, so I copied it and brought it here.
Fantastic. So you've said
the first thing,
look for business traction.
Natural traction. And when you peel away, what's behind the natural traction, you come across stuff and stories like this. Now, we have also invested in companies that are pre-revenue, pre-product. For example, when we invested in Policy Bazaar, which is also a big success for us, it had not launched. It was a concept. It was not even a PowerPoint. It was a conversation.
An idea stage, which means that they didn't have any...
Nothing, no product. Okay. So Yashish Daya met me and he said, I'm willing to bet. I want to launch an insurance comparison site. I said, insurance comparison? Just samjha. He said, I'm willing to bet that you're paying 60% more for your car insurance than you need to. I said, don't be silly. I'm buying from public sector company. I bought it, the dealer sold it to me along with the car. And every year I renew it. Standard insurance, standard company, standard price, standard car. So he said, no, I'm telling you. So he said, take out your car insurance papers. So I had them in my office. So I took them out. He said, okay, fine. So-and-so car, so-and-so year, with no accident insurance taken in the past. Right? All of that. Give me 10 minutes. And he queried some databases somewhere on his laptop. And he came out with 8 quotes. And sure enough, the cheapest quote was 40% lower than what I was paying. And I was stunned.
Wow.
And to me, that was a crazy value proposition. That if there is so much variation in insurance prices and so much opacity and so much lack of customer knowledge.
Exactly.
Because see, insurance, we actually don't understand what you're buying. We buy car insurance, it's a legal requirement. So we do it. We used to buy life insurance because of tax savings. People don't fully comprehend the insurance they buy. And you don't really know how to compare this policy with that policy. But the price is something you can hang a hook on for a standard policy.
Correct.
When I saw this kind of variation in prices and this kind of opacity and this kind of lack of knowledge in the customer, I said, ye to kaam karega. And there was no other offering like that in the market.
So this was truly differentiated. This was truly novel. And the customer proposition was very, very apparent over
Absolutely. But you see, even Zomato was differentiated because nobody else has got menu cards. Now, it would have been possible somebody to copy it, right? It would have been possible, just as it's possible somebody to copy the policy, and people did. But the point is, if you're first mover, if you're innovator, and you move fast, and you build traction, and once you start getting traction, you raise money, and then you build brand, and dominate the category, then it's hard for somebody to copy you. And people can copy you in terms of product offering, but it's hard for people to actually get that kind of eyeballs and traffic share, especially if it's a network effect business. Many internet businesses they're network effect businesses.
A little more about this network effect businesses. What do you mean by that?
So let's call it a business of the virtuous circle. Okay. So let me give you an example of Naukri. At Naukri, we've got the most jobs. Therefore, we get the most traffic because jobs are a traffic magnet. People want to know about jobs. We get the most traffic. Therefore, we get the most response. We get the most response, therefore we get the most clients. Now, if you've got a good virtual circle going for yourself, then you can invest more in innovation, product development, sales, customer service, and brand building. And that will strengthen your virtual circle. So if you look at media markets, most media markets, take a look at newspaper market. Most newspaper markets are markets of the virtuous circle. I've got the most circulation, therefore I can subsidize my price of paper. right? So it probably
Yes.
costs 15, 20 rupees to produce the Times of India, but you sell it for 150
Yes.
or whatever. I don't know what the latest price is,
Yes.
right? The 1350, deficit is more than made up
Yes.
through advertising,
Yeah, absolutely.
and that's how you build a fortress. It's a market of the virtuous circle, right? Now, many offline consumer brands, physical products are not like that. But certainly media brands are like that, internet brands very often are like that. Winner take all markets.
Very nice. So, in the stuff that you spoke about earlier, Sanjeev, you said a lot of things. You talked about the importance of consumer insights. You talked about solving and unsolved problems. I want to delve into each of
Look,
a little
before we go
more.
there are a few other things we
Yes.
look at apart from this. You look at quality of team,
Yes.
commitment of team, integrity. You look at commitment, capability. You look at people skills. Okay. You look at competition. You look at market size potentially, right? You look at, are customers really happy with this? You talk to customers, right? You look at margins, unit economics. You look at path to break even, path to profit. So those are the things you look at.
Fantastic.
What
You talked about business traction. Is this differentiated or does this have the ability to attract more business? Is there a genuine consumer need you're solving for? Then you talked about the quality of the team, competition, people skills, market size. Is there a large enough market? Are consumers happy? Unit economics, which are all the financials.
Yeah, one more thing which I mentioned. Is it defensible? Now, if you've got a virtuous circle going for you, or can get it going for you, it's defensible. If you've got
Right.
some IP, it's defensible. If you've got a product formulation, where मेरा taste alag hai, or the legendary Coke formula, right? If you've got that, that's defensible. And if you can build
Right.
brand, it's defensible.
Right. So on this point on defensibility, I'm coming to my next question now, Sanjeev. On this point on defensibility, now अगर कोई copy नहीं कर सकता फिर तो that's great. But if you're in most categories today, कोई copy नहीं कर सकता is very very difficult to get to. You know, there you talked about the first mover advantage as Zomato had or as Policy Bazaar had. But if I'm entering in a already crowded category, then how does one build an IP? Which means my product itself might not be differentiated.
In the online world, when you're building a platform or you're building a website, and it's not a physical product you're selling, you can
Right,
differentiate because you're limited by your imagination. At the end of the day, Zomato
right,
was differentiated, it remains differentiated. Policybazaar was differentiated,
right.
it remains differentiated, but both these companies now have many, many other aspects of their defensibility.
Where you're saying it's not limited to the product or the service you're offering. It's also about, when I say service, it could be the user interface, it could be the experience in the delivery, it could be in how soon you deliver, etc.,
So
right?
let me give another example from the online world. So at Naukri, you think it's a job site, but actually 60% of our revenue comes from the resume database, where companies pay us money to access our database of resumes. Only 40% does not come from there, right? Now, when you build a large database of resumes, so we now have got 7. So let me give you an example from the online world from Naukri. At Naukri, we do probably 50 or 75 innovations a year on the product. Many of them you don't see because they're
Wow.
behind the scenes. We tweak the algorithm. We do
Right.
something else, right? So you think Naukri is a job site, but actually 60% of our revenue comes from the resume database, where companies pay us money to access a database of resumes. We've got close to 7 crore, maybe over 7 crore resumes, right? So 1 in 20 Indians is with us, right? Now,
Wow.
when you have such a large database of resumes and you search it, so let's say you're searching for a simple search, C, C++, Java as a skill set, 3 to 5 years experience,
Right.
B, BTech, computer science, located in Bangalore.
Right.
You may
Right.
get 300,000 resumes or 200,000, large number of resumes, right? The truth is there are very many unarticulated criteria a recruiter has in his or her head, where they look at a CV and
Right.
apply judgment. Yeah, this
Correct.
company, doesn't really fit that project. He's not done our kind of projects. No, this is a services company. We want a products company. So they use many, many things that they can't apply. They can't
Correct.
articulate in a written search, but they use their judgment to
Right.
shortlist or not shortlist. So now, when you get 300,000 resumes, you could find 2 relevant ones on page 1, nothing on page 2, 3 on page 3, 1 on page 4, and so on and so forth. So to get together 30,
Correct.
40, or 50 resumes, you have to go through maybe 100 pages of the search.
Right.
That takes time. And we said, is there a way we can understand without asking the recruiter? What are the unarticulated criteria? How is his judgment formed? And then if we can understand that, can we group those CVs on top?
Fantastic.
Now, non-trivial problem. It took us 3 years to crack it. But they finally came out with something that delivered.
And I would imagine arriving at this, or even arriving at this understanding that you're talking about, which is there are so many things in his head which are unarticulated. You would have observed the consumer very, very carefully. How do you get to know that there are so many things unarticulated in
Yeah,
his head?
so I'll come to that. So basically, we did something. We produced an algorithm, which is our IP, but we did not apply for a patent. Because when you apply for a patent, you disclose. We don't want to disclose how we're doing it. It's a trade secret. Right?
Okay.
And we just said,
Okay.
if you like any one CV, there's a button here saying view similar CVs. You click on that, and the search reorders itself.
Right.
And the ones you like all come together at the top. We introduced this, and within a week, there was feedback from the sales team. Hey, our clients are going crazy. How are you doing? This is fantastic. What a killer move. Because we had the algorithm and our competition doesn't. Right? We have differentiated in a manner that's not copyable so easily. And we are able to do that because we're able to invest more in R&D by hiring more engineers, smarter engineers who can do stuff like this. We are able to do that because we already have the virtuous circle going in our favor. We are making so much profit. So we reinvest that profit in some stuff like this to differentiate the product. Now, you asked a question of how did we find out? So, very simple. We have a sales team, a field sales team that goes out and meets clients. Now, we began to put the sales team together in around the year 2000 or 2001. They would go out and make sales calls to HR managers. What we did was we created a Yahoo group. In those days, there were Yahoo groups, which are email groups, of all the salespeople, of the marketing people, the product engineering people, and all the senior management. So about 250 people on one Yahoo group. And we told the sales guys, you go on sales calls, whatever your customer tells you, please put it on this group.
Fantastic.
I went to this customer. This is what he said. This is working. This is not working. This is a gap. This is this. This is that. Why don't you think of this? Competition is doing this. And this feedback would come in every day from all the salespeople around the country. So we had found a way to a platform where customer feedback was coming in every day. So if there are 250 salespeople making 4 sales calls a day, there's 1,000 sales calls. Even if 1/5 of them report something, you're getting 200 pieces of feedback. It's coming to the head of sales, head of marketing, head of technology, head of product, the CEO, head of finance, everybody.
Fantastic. So each knows what do I need to do differently.
Well, so, obviously you can't act on every single piece of customer feedback, but if a pattern emerges, hey, there may be something here. Try and do it. So enough customers said, it's a pain. There are lots of irrelevant CVs that come. Then we figure, then we go and talk to them and say, boss, what do you mean by relevant? You did this search, the CVs that came out fulfill this criteria. But isme ye hai, isme ye hai, isme ye nahi hai. Then you figure that there's a whole bunch of unarticulated stuff where they apply judgment. And then you say, okay, problem statement is.
So you would have never arrived at this had you not had an ear to the sales force.
You have to keep talking to the customer, getting feedback.
And you can never assume that you've solved the problem. You can never assume that I already know enough.
So let me tell you something. If you had 1,000 resume database of this sort, because there aren't so many resumes that will come up in the search, then the problem, we don't have enough resumes. But the moment you have 7 crore resumes, right, you get this problem that there are so many resumes that don't meet my unarticulated criteria. So new problems keep emerging. Customer keeps evolving. Competition moves. Customer has new needs. Customer suddenly says, hey, you don't have enough resumes. Now, the customer needs have evolved. He now wants AI-ML resumes. He did not want them 10 years ago.
Right. So it's just a constant feedback mechanism that you have, which is a surrogate for consumer research, which you've developed. And over here, what you've also done is because you have heads of all of these functional heads on that group, they're also seeing how what each of them do is affecting.
Yeah, that's what we did in the 2001. Since then, Yahoo Groups has stopped being used. Now there are other ways to do it.
And how would you do this now, Sanjeev?
WhatsApp. It's much faster.
Okay. So you have a big WhatsApp group.
I guess now, there are so many people in the company that, not everybody's on every group. So there are different teams doing different stuff. So head of Naukri business would be doing it.
Okay, fantastic. So tell me in this context, Sanjeev, what will the future of marketing look like? Is the future of marketing going to change? I mean, now there are just so many words, there are so many fancy jargons that a lot of us use. We're talking about data, we're talking about AI, ML, we're talking about mass personalization. What aspects of marketing do you think might remain the same?
No, look, the fundamentals don't change. You are in the business of creating value for your customer, solving an unsolved problem, delivering some benefit, making a promise and fulfilling it, satisfying a need. That doesn't change. And hopefully doing it better than competition. Okay. Hopefully become a preferred brand for your customer, or at least enough customers that you're a viable business. That doesn't change. Now you can innovate in the summer. You can differentiate, do R&D, add new products. You can change the formulation a bit. You make it work better. But you may use big data. You may use data analytics if you get customer data to figure out
Right,
what the customer needs, is not getting, and how you can satisfy the customer better. But
right,
first you have to get that data.
right.
So the traditional way of marketing is FMCG. I think my second job was in the Horlicks company, so I know a little bit about FMCG and a little bit about advertising. Was, hey, do some market research, understand the customers, produce a product, distribute channel, advertise, but many brands would fail. Obviously, what they were doing was not good enough. They didn't have enough of an understanding of the customer need. Distribution, many companies can do. Because if you're already a company which has got a good distribution network, you will put the new product in your distribution network. You'll hire a big agency and produce a decent creative and spend tens of crores on it. Ultimately, the moment of truth is when the customer buys the second time, not the first time.
Absolutely.
I
Yes.
used it, I liked it, I've come back again. So the
Absolutely.
greatest uncertainty for a marketer is inside the customer's head or the consumer's head. So can you get into the consumer's head and figure out?
And that's where you may use data in some
Yes,
way.
yes,
You
yes.
may.
Market research, consumer conversations, just observations and data. So I'll tell you a simple thing, and I believe some companies have done it. I believe Unilever has done it. I do not know what the response has been, but if you simply put a toll-free number on your pack, if you're an FMCG business, and say, call us and talk to us. We want to hear from you. Okay? You may be surprised by the response. And if you have a call center at the back where people are talking and recording, let's take the example of a brand. Which are the brands you're working with?
I'm working with a bakery brand called the Baker's Dozen with a company that helps women solve for PCOS.
Let's take the PCOS company. Why can't there be a telephone number with expert advice at the end on the phone? Just not pushing the product. Just to say, hey, I have this problem. What could it be because of? Okay, consult your doctor here.
Right.
What are you doing so far? What has your doctor said? Okay,
Correct.
how old are you? What's your
Correct.
diet like? I'm
Right.
sending you some links and
Right.
resources. PCOS is
Right.
fixable. So a counseling service. In the process, you get customer data. In the process, you understand the customer concerns. In the process, you figure out, hey, we got 5,000 calls in the last 3 months. Here are the patterns that are emerging. So a 20-person call center working 8 hours a day, taking, maybe say 8 calls a day per person, which is 160 calls per day into 25 days. You're talking about, 3,500 calls a month, right? Those are prospective customer touch points that will just help you. Now that's data. Now somebody sits and analyzes the data. Somebody sits and listens to those conversations that are recorded. Hey, I want to talk to this customer again.
Oh, it's invaluable data because
It used to be that people will go out with questionnaires to people's homes. जी आपके घर में teenage लड़की है, and that's one way to gather data. Other ways to do it this way. You're still gathering data. So market research has evolved and is evolving.
Yes, absolutely. And there are so many smart ways of doing it. I mean, today we can also just mine social media to get insights. Like you talked about observations. You said observations are very powerful. I think it's much, much, much underrated.
There is this legendary story. I do not know if it's true or not. But when I began my career in advertising, or when I was in marketing, I was told this story about this head of sales or head of marketing or marketing manager in what was then Richardson & Son, now is Procter & Gamble, right? The Vicks company. And he used to just go and sit behind a shop counter for days on end, pretending to be a shopkeeper, and just observe customers. And from there, he got so many insights, which informed the advertising communication of Vicks. I am told, I don't know for sure, but I could be wrong, that the concept of girl came from there because customers are saying it. it may be a apocryphal story, maybe not true,
Yeah.
but ये legend है marketing में. So,
And this is what we don't do enough
yeah.
of, as advertisers, as marketers. This is simplest things that can get you so much. It is the surrogate of consumer insights, what we gather through consumer research or data. Fantastic. So tell me, without bags of money, I mean, you talked about one of the things that you've said about building a brand, about a brand is that it's a consistent customer experience. And a consistent customer experience shouldn't require a whole lot of money, right? I'm talking about a lot of startups, a whole lot of early stage startups who may not have a lot of money but are looking to build a brand, understand the value of a brand. What should they be doing in order to
See,
see
it
it?
depends on your situation, on your industry, on your market, on your product category, right? It's slightly easier for a group of 3 engineers to program and build an app or a website that delivers the same experience every time, because software will repeat the same experience. It's slightly harder
Right.
to produce a jam or a marmalade for a new company, because then you got to get the manufacturing process right. You got to make sure it's done
Right.
each time the same way. You got to make sure the formulation is there. You got to make sure the ingredients are right, which is sourcing. Let's say you're sourcing apples. Now, no 2 apples are the same. So you got to have sourcing methods that you are sourcing right. So it's a slightly harder problem to solve if you're not just doing the software. So in your old economy, real world, problems are not so easy to have standard solutions for as they are in software. The
Right.
software will repeat
Right.
itself.
But the user experience could be more than just the product, isn't it? It could be in the packaging, it could be in the user interface, like you were talking about earlier, it could be in the delivery, it could be in how you talk to the
I agree.
consumer.
So services are more variable than products. And you got your methods and processes all documented. And you got a QC all there, right? You can still you can still have standardization. But a service where there's human beings interfacing, and a large part of the service delivery is, hey, she wasn't polite to me. I didn't like. That's variability. So standardizing that is slightly harder. I mean, you can do it with the aid of technology and training and the right recruitment, but there will still be some variability.
And that is where there is opportunity to build a brand, isn't it? In the services sector, then, like you're just saying, you want to make sure that every woman who's talking to the consumer leaves the consumer feeling exactly the same way. So, Sanjeev, tell me, how does one build a brand without money? What would you suggest? What would your advice be to startups?
So the first thing is, if you are solving an unsolved problem, then hopefully your customer will buy, you won't have to sell. So by your sheer product formulation or your sheer what you're selling, Naukri did it, Zomato did it, Policybazaar did it, because they were solving an unsolved problem. That's the first thing. The second thing is, see, it is said that advertising builds brands. Now, having worked in advertising and in marketing and having been an entrepreneur now for 32 years, my view is that advertising does not build brands. Customer experience and word of mouth builds brands. Advertising is an accelerator. It's a very useful thing in the mix, but it's an accelerator. So advertising will make a good product succeed faster. It will make a bad product fail faster. Because the more people get to know about a bad product, more people will not use the second time. So if you don't have your product right, don't advertise. Get your product right, only then advertise. Because get your product right, and the moment it's accepted by a small bunch of consumers and they like it, that's when you believe that, hey, I can scale this thing because I've got a product market fit. And that's when you advertise.
So advertising alone can't build a
Absolutely.
brand.
See, advertising builds
business,
awareness,
because
or advertising builds some memorability of the advertising. But if you try the
Right.
product and the experience is not good, no amount of advertising can convince you to buy it a second time.
Right. You can't just create a whole lot of very high decibel levels and hope that consumers would come.
You have to deliver to your promise. Your
Right.
advertising is communicating a promise. If you're unable to deliver to that promise, it's the wrong advertising and your product is wrong. So don't do that. First, be sure your product is delivering to that promise. It must be relevant. It must be different. R&D, relevance and difference. Now, relevance is what? It's solving an unsolved problem. That's how it's relevant. Different means there's nobody else like it.
That may not always be an easy one.
It is not. But if you're first mover and then you sort of roll out rapidly, Then you occupy the space. Then everybody else is a copycat.
But if you're not a first mover and you're entering a crowded category and you have nothing to talk about in the product,
Then you have a problem.
I'm just a bread. I'm just another.
Then you better be cheaper, or you better be more easily available, or you better deliver to my house while I have to go to the store.
So there has to be something that you have to find.
Good old USP, which was 1960s advertising. Good old USP. What's your USP? It need not.
Which doesn't have to be in the product.
It need not be just in the product, but your product has to be at least competitive. You can't sell a bad bread.
So there's this concept that we call, which is have points of parity. Like I was saying about a toothpaste, at the very minimum, you must make sure that you do everything else that the other toothpaste.
So there's a concept called spiky differentiation. There are 100 attributes to a product. Before Zomato came, before Swiggy came, before food delivery was just in the local area, they put out a network, they put out a standard pizza, and it's with you in 30 minutes. So, yes, it is a pizza company, but more than that, it's a delivery company. So what was different about Domino's? There were probably in that city 100 restaurants selling pizzas. They delivered to your house, no matter where you were. They had a network of outlets. So what is your spiky differentiation? Is that differentiation relevant, or can you make it relevant? The second thing I want to say is, on this thing of building brands cheap, is thoda out of the box socho, thoda guerrilla marketing. So I'll tell you how a few things we did at Naukri early on. We said we have to source jobs. Now, we don't have a large sales team to go out and source jobs. We don't have a call center will call them and give us jobs. What do? We just get 29 newspapers from around the country that carry appointment ads. We rehash those appointments in our own words and put them up on the site. So now we've got a cheap source of supply of jobs. Ek bari jobs ho gayi site pe, we know traffic will come because people are looking for jobs. What's the value prop? So you come to our site, see the jobs you missed. वो ad आया Chennai में, आप हो दिल्ली में. Come and see it. We are creating an archive of all jobs published in ads in the last 1 month. That's what Naukri was when we launched. And it cost us 29 newspapers a week into our office to do that, to source those jobs.
And a lot of hard work.
How do we attract more and more job seekers? Or how do you get more and more jobs? The virtuous circle. We've got the most jobs, therefore we get the most response. It works for us, snowballs. Now, after 6 months of taking free jobs from newspapers, we had got a database of 6 months of jobs. It simply took out the addresses of all the advertisers. In those days, there was no email. People had sent physical addresses on the job ads. And we pulled it out. We had a database of 3,000 recruitment managers around the country. We sent them all a letter saying, listen, we know you advertise only a fraction of your jobs in print because print is expensive. For 6,000 rupees a year, you can put all your jobs on Naukri. And we began to get thousands of jobs, which were not advertised in print. So it was unique content which people wanted to know about.
And it's great value for both the recruiter as well as the job seeker.
The moment more and more job seekers came, more and more subscriptions began to sell. So this was cheap marketing, just a letter. And newspapers say job nikalna, right? The second thing we did was, when we studied the print ad market for appointment ads, we discovered maybe 70 or 75% of print ads, appointment ads, go to the Times of India group. The only other appointment ads in those days was the Hindu in Chennai. So we said, hey, we can take advantage of this. We went to the second newspaper in every city and said, you don't get appointment ads, right? Why don't we tie up? Whatever appointment ads you get, we'll put on Naukri. And so your advertisers get a response. And you put up a selection of jobs from Naukri in your newspaper in a classified format so that your readers get value and you can build an appointment ad section around it. So readers get into the habit of looking at your paper and then you can get paid ads on the back of that. So build your appointment ad section. Tied up over the next 3 years with about 20 or 30 newspapers around the country on this. And we were able to communicate to the offline users about Naukri. If you are running a small business, let's say you're an FMCG company, you're starting out, you can sell online on your site or Amazon, and you will get advertisers from around the country. You'll get customers from around the country. You're going wide and shallow. You're not going deep and narrow. It may also be useful to consider going deep and narrow in a certain geographical niche, for example.
This is a great value, Sanjeev, because a lot of startups actually are tempted to go all over. Why don't I advertise here and here? Why don't I recruit sales guys in the northeast, west, south at very early stages, which is very expensive.
See, when you appoint a distributor, if the distributor does not move enough volume of your product, it doesn't become a priority brand for him. He's not making enough money on it. But if you focus on the geography and say in Gurgaon, I've got 3 distributors and I'm selling in 4,000 outlets. Now I can focus my marketing money on Gurgaon. I have 12 salespeople in Gurgaon alone. That's it.
So once I own that territory, then I create a moat for myself, a virtual moat for myself, a strong place for myself, even offline distribution. Yes, this is offline.
Yeah, so offline distribution in Gurgaon, for example, may make sense. But D2C nahi. But look, most D2C brands or so-called online sales brand, online first brands, ultimately have to go offline. Because online, maybe you can only sell so much.
Fantastic.
India is still largely an offline country.
So you have to sell. If you have ambitions to really become big, then you have to have presence both online and offline.
I hope you liked my show. And if you did, please do consider subscribing. I also have a YouTube channel by the same name, Marketing by Vani. Please do check that out too. Thank you.
How badly could she screw up one line? Okay. So I did screw up. My YouTube channel is called Marketing with Vani, the same name as this podcast.